How did Donald Trump win the 2024 election? Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe. And I want to talk about this for one last time. And that's why I want to make this particular episode a compendium of what I have said. And then I want to add a few other things that I left behind in talking about what were the reasons. So, at the very beginning, when the results came out and I realized that Donald Trump was going to win the election, I, at the outset, said, mea culpa, I was wrong to think that there are enough decent people in the country who would be able to stop Donald Trump at the polls. I was wrong to think that women would continue to push for reproductive freedom in a monolith way. I was wrong to think that Democrats had an idea of what uh, what the American people wanted, and then I explored that. In further episodes, I came to this realization that yes, the threat of democracy is a truth. But the cost of groceries for somebody who is pinching every penny, that cost is the bigger truth than the threat to democracy. Gas price for people who are trying their best to make ends meet with two jobs and still raising a family, these people, for them, the truth is the price of eggs. So if there was any sort of mandate that Donald Trump's election resulted in, that was to lower the cost of living for the American people, whether that be housing, car prices, food prices, gas prices, whether that be inconveniences caused by uh, price gouging. These are the things when the Republicans went after inflation and said everything was costing too much, then they are taking the responsibility of saying we will bring down this inflation because Donald Trump said the inflation will go away. Well, inflation is where it was at when Donald Trump left office 4 years ago because President Biden had to deal with the inflation that resulted from the COVID crash because of the debacle that Donald Trump created from the COVID crisis. Can't forget that. So we think about these prices to be the bigger truth. And that's what got to and got through to the American people. But what resulted was Donald Trump becoming the first American to be above the rule of law. And SCOTUS and the courts and the judiciary failed to hold him accountable for his principal crime of conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to defraud us of our right to vote, conspiring to obstruct official proceedings and obstruction of official proceedings, namely the certification of the 2020 election. If our institutions would have held and had the Supreme Court not sided with Donald Trump and issued an immunity opinion that shielded Donald Trump even more, and now that is president, he is the reach of the presidency under Trump v. USA is nothing like we have seen before. Joe Biden isn't the type of president who would exploit that, but I would bet my bottom dollar that Donald Trump is the type of president who would exploit that immunity. So, as we have seen, we have also seen how, and I've talked about how manhood and the fear of losing manliness, thereby lifting up the issue of trans rights and talking about boys going to school and coming back as girls. They never talk about girls going to school and coming back as boys, if you'll notice. And it's talking about having children, about the straight norm, empowering young Americans who have a looser sense of history than just going along and therefore not understanding the power that is wielded when you bring up masculinity and manhood to any man, especially the American man, because it has been politically used for over a century, more than 150, 160 years. It has been used as a political tool. And then I sort of warned you about what we have coming. As populism rises in our country, we have populism that is premised on a house of lies, that is Donald Trump's MAGA, cannot stand the fact of how the grocery prices or housing costs or gas prices. And we will see whether Donald Trump's administration will be able to meet those challenges or not. And we now see with Donald Trump's nominations that no, it doesn't seem like Donald Trump is thinking about all of the promises that he made about bringing inflation down, bringing corruption, taking corruption out. That how do you propose that when your nominee, your designate for Attorney General, has a history of sexually assaulting minors or having sex with minors? How do you have a Department of Defense secretary who has no experience in the bureaucracy of the American military, who has been a serviceman to his credit, but other than that, he knows nothing about it? Then you have a known propagandist, Kremlin mouthpiece, Tulsi Gabbard, who will be apparently heading up the Office of Director of National Intelligence. She would be the Director of National Intelligence. These are not serious picks. And and you're right to say that they are a clown show. And with more additions in the Department of Education, McMahon, or whatever her name is, she's linked to the WWF. And you have a group of people who are, some of them may be qualified, but some of them are a danger. And you see that how did they come into power? By riling up manliness. And don't think that in American politics, race and gender isn't a part of it. It's ever present in the game of American power. And we've learned that women are not a monolith. Their priorities aren't the same. We've seen that in this election, a large amount of non-white, that is Latino and white women, voted for Donald Trump over a woman candidate. And Black women overwhelmingly voted for Kamala Harris, but white women and Latina women didn't. And you have to wonder why. You have to come to terms with the fact that the issue of reproductive freedom and women's togetherness in that is not even, it's not a factor when it comes to comparing it to the price of gasoline, because it doesn't touch everybody unless you're a woman. And some women are predisposed to thinking. There's this one story of this woman who was 81 years old, and it was the first time she voted, and she didn't vote all her life because her husband wouldn't let her vote. And her husband died last year, so it was the first time that she voted. And I'm going to go out there, and I've worked in domestic violence units. I'm going to go out there and say that this woman isn't the only woman to vote for a certain candidate because of a family situation. I mean, the way that fear works doesn't have to be present in the stall with you. And so we have to sort of understand and grapple with the fact that women are not, so gender cannot be looked at as a monolith, and this controversy of trans rights and this ugliness that Nancy Mace has started in the House because of Miss Sarah McBride being the first transgender woman to be representative in the House of Representatives, and it is a distraction, and it is nasty. It's disgusting. It's ignorant, but it is a distraction from this massive chaos that is coming to us in the form of Donald Trump's administration. You know, and as we talk more about the few other reasons that I left out, I want to talk about how Christianity and far-right extremist Christianity played a role in it. So the sinner coming to be redeemed has a lot of power to be born again. You know, so Donald Trump, with his indiscretions, sort of played the role of the redeemer by being redeemed by all these people praying for him, you know, and turning Donald Trump into a figure of religious adherence, a prodigal son who has returned, you know, a sinner who has been redeemed. And this message of the redeemed becoming the redeemer and in far-right Christian circles has powerful pull. So yes, religion played a part in it. And then again, yes, Russia has been employing active measures in our country to disrupt information, and they called in bomb threats to particular areas that have high Democratic voter turnouts. They have been sowing chaos through Americans on American media and social media. And they've been doing this for years and years and years and years and inundating. And that same pattern of inundation, Donald Trump, with the same pattern of propaganda with Donald Trump, has inundated the public, because that level of daily inundation of the lies makes many accept the lies as the truth. And that's all the more reason why we cannot stop speaking up and talking about the truth. And then we have Elon Musk. You know, Elon Musk, I talked about Elon Musk before, how he was disrupting Twitter and how he was disengaging a certain demographic. And it turns out that not only is he disengaging, but also he was heavily helping Donald Trump in how he moderated Twitter, or he calls it X. And you know, something very curious happened after the election. So many accounts started to disappear. It was as if Elon Musk was culling all the bots, even the verified ones, because the verified ones came with money. You realize it came with money. So Donald Trump is getting hundreds of millions of dollars from Elon Musk. Elon Musk is farming money from Twitter and using Twitter as an engine to spread more disinformation. And we've now seen the impact of that. And so these are all reasons why this election became a referendum on the price of eggs, because Donald Trump and MAGA were able to touch a nerve of the American people who have been hit by inflation. And that includes a large swath of Americans who are poor Americans. I consider myself part of that group. Many people are part of that group. Many more poor people in our country than rich people in our country. Some 660 billionaires control 90% of the wealth, or something absurd like that. But and now we are seeing the beginnings of an oligarchy happening, because we have fallen for. We should blame ourselves as well. Many who are part of the pro-democracy coalition also inadvertently amplified right talking points by sharing them to shame them. But that only works to a certain degree. Once that sort of that sort of propaganda becomes inundated, you are just reinforcing that inundation. Instead of calling it out for exactly what it is right there, if you are to share things about it, then put an alt text or speak about it. What you think about that particular repost that you're reposting that has got that vile in it that we don't need to perpetuate, but we still do because we want other people to know. I don't want to talk about specifically the disgusting, nasty, and hateful, ignorant nature of what Nancy Mace is doing, but that is worth talking about for a little while as a distraction from what Donald Trump is doing with picking his cabinet. So the responsibility at the end of it, and I'll end with this. Thank you, Satish, for being here. I'll end with this to say that, the internet is not your friend, but the internet is also not to blame. We have the choice of picking the news. We have the choice of reading something and not reading another. We have the choice of listening to the masses saying that, yes, we choose the price of eggs over the threat to democracy. Well, the threat to democracy remains, and the price of eggs have come down. And now we will see whether the threat to democracy becomes so acute that it starts pinching the same wallets that voted for Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump is not going to give the poor a tax break. Donald Trump is going to give the ultra rich a tax break. He said that he's going to. So you can bet your bottom dollar that Donald Trump will not be able to carry forward the promises that he has made. But the American people have made their voices heard. That even with reproductive freedom on the ballot, women are not a monolith. That inflation really is that big. When it hits the wallet, it really is that big. And that is the most palpable topic that anybody could relate to, that a majority of Americans related to. And at one point, we will talk about, and I have to figure out why, the turnout for Democrats were also less than in Joe Biden. Was it because we were so aware of the acute incapability of the Trump administration to handle COVID? Was it the scare that we need a change, or was it inflation? What is it that inspired more people to vote for Joe Biden than Kamala Harris? And in that, I would say that gender plays a role, and the manliness propaganda plays a role, despite the fact that the turnout for this election was lower net than the last election. So with all of this said, I want y'all to be aware of every single nomination that Donald Trump is making. If nomination, and I would implore you to call your senators, even if they're red senators, their offices with complaints about how you need to have the full truth about Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard before they are placed in positions, and RFK Jr. for the Health and Human Services overseeing the CDC and the FDA, and Tulsi Gabbard, a propagandist for Director of National Intelligence, Matt Gaetz, who has a history with sexual misdeeds, to be the Attorney General. He has no prosecutorial experience. I have half a year's of prosecutorial experience, and that's more than Matt Gaetz has. And then you have Hegseth, as I said, not qualified. Marco Rubio may be qualified to be Secretary of State, although he doesn't, he's not insane. He's not completely unqualified. He's a senator of the United States. He's been there for quite a while. So, and now I'm going on, but keep an eye out on everything. We have to call out wherever we see falsities. We have to red flag them and not just go quietly. We can't be the legacy media that has bowed down to Donald Trump. You don't have to bow down to Donald Trump to be part of the media. That's maybe I guess if you're part of legacy media, if you have to have a White House correspondent in the press office, also traveling with the president, you have to make nice with them. I mean, access, right? But thank God, people like me and people much more, popular on YouTube than me are going to keep talking the truth, and we're going to keep spreading it, and we're going to keep talking about it, and we're going to keep spreading the truth about how the fourth estate has complied and how democracy dies when the fourth estate complies. With that said, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.